I did everything for my family while attending university. Dishes, cooking, driving my siblings to school. But when my mom called me useless, I stopped helping completely, and within days, the entire household collapsed. Before we begin, tell us in the comments from which city are you watching. And at the end, do not forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The kitchen clock read 11:47 p.m. when Sarah finally closed her biochemistry textbook. At 20 years old, she should have been worried about midterms and maybe what to wear to the campus coffee shop. Instead, she was calculating whether she had enough energy left to meal prep for tomorrow's family dinners. Sarah lived at home with her single mother and 5 siblings while finishing her nursing degree at university. Her older brothers, Alex and Ben, 23 and 22, both had full-time jobs. Her younger siblings, Chris at 17, Diana at 15, and little Ethan at 12, were still in school. The house was always chaotic, always loud, always demanding something. But Sarah had learned to be invisible in her own life. Every single morning started the same way. Her alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., not because her first class was early, but because the household needed her. She'd stumble into the kitchen and start the coffee maker, then begin loading the dishwasher with last night's abandoned dishes. Plates crusted with dried food, glasses with milk rings at the bottom, pots that her brothers had used for their late-night snacks and left in the sink. By 6 a.m., she was making breakfast. Not for herself. She usually grabbed a protein bar on her way out, but for Ethan, who couldn't function without a hot meal. Toast, eggs, sometimes pancakes if she'd remembered to buy mix. At 6:45, she was yelling up the stairs for Chris and Diana to get ready, checking that Ethan had his homework, his lunch money, his permission slip for whatever field trip was happening that week. 7 a.m. meant loading everyone into her beat-up Honda Civic, the one she'd bought herself with money from a government study allowance, and driving them to their schools. 3 different locations. 3 different drop-off times. She'd perfected the route over 2 years. Left turn at the pharmacy, right at the elementary school, loop back for the high school. By the time she made it to her own university, parked in the furthest lot because she couldn't afford a closer permit, and walked to her first lecture, it was usually 8:45. Her classes started at 8:30, but that was just the morning. After classes ended, usually around 3:30 or 4 p.m., she'd reverse the route, pick up Ethan from after-school care, grab Diana from volleyball practice, wait 20 minutes for Chris to finish whatever he was doing with his friends, home by 5:00 p.m. if she was lucky. Then it started again. The vacuum came out every other day because 5 brothers and sisters meant crumbs everywhere, backpacks thrown in corners, shoes creating obstacle courses in the hallway. She'd vacuum the living room, the dining room, the stairs. The whir of the machine was so constant that Ethan once asked if it was the house's heartbeat. Laundry was technically everyone's responsibility. Her mother had declared that years ago, but Sarah still ended up gathering towels from the bathroom floors, washing the kitchen rags that nobody else remembered, throwing in loads of Ethan's school clothes because Diana was too busy to help him. The bathrooms were the worst. Sarah had learned not to look too closely at what her brothers did in there. Pee on the floor, not even near the toilet, just somehow on the floor, toothpaste globs in the sink, hair in the drain, towels that smelled like teenage boys who discovered body spray but not proper hygiene. She cleaned anyway. And then came dinner. Sarah wasn't a natural cook, but she'd learned through necessity and YouTube tutorials. Pasta with marinara on Mondays, chicken stir-fry on Tuesdays, tacos on Wednesdays. A rotation that kept everyone fed and kept the complaints to a minimum. She'd chop vegetables while reviewing lecture notes propped against the backsplash. She'd stir sauce while listening to recorded anatomy lessons on her earbuds. She'd plate food while mentally rehearsing the presentation she had to give tomorrow. "Dinner's ready!" she'd call out. Her brothers would thunder down the stairs, grab plates, and retreat back to their rooms to play video games. Her mother would eat in front of the TV. Diana would take her food and text her friends. Chris would inhale his meal in under 5 minutes and leave his plate on the table. Nobody said thank you. Nobody asked about her day. Nobody noticed the dark circles under her eyes, or the way her hands shook slightly from exhaustion, or how she'd started losing weight because she was too tired to remember to feed herself. And here's what made it worse. Her older brothers had jobs, real jobs, with salaries. Alex worked in IT support at a tech company. Ben was a junior accountant somewhere downtown. They both made decent money, probably twice what Sarah received from her small government allowance for students. But did they help with rent, groceries, utilities? Not a single dollar. Did they cook a meal? Drive the younger kids anywhere? Clean a bathroom? Never! What did they do after work? Video games. Every single night. She could hear the gunfire and explosions from their rooms, the trash talk over their headsets, the hours and hours of leisure time that she couldn't even imagine having. Sarah contributed $150 every week from her tiny allowance toward household expenses. Her mother had asked for it. You live here too, you should contribute, and Sarah had agreed because that's what you did. You helped, you contributed, you pulled your weight. But Alex and Ben? Nothing. They paid for their own car insurance and their gaming subscriptions, and apparently that was enough. Her mother didn't help either. Oh, she was busy. Sarah understood that. Single mother, 5 kids still at home, a job that required long hours. But her mother's version of busy meant Sarah had become the de facto parent. Her mother didn't cook, didn't clean beyond occasionally wiping down the kitchen counter, didn't drive the kids anywhere, didn't help with homework or school projects or remember picture day. That was all Sarah. Sarah paid her own university tuition through student loans. Her mother had made it clear, you're an adult now, your education is your responsibility. So Sarah had signed the papers, watched the debt counter climb, and pushed down the small voice that whispered, Alex and Ben got help with their certifications. Why don't I? She knew why. Because she was the girl. Because girls were supposed to be helpful. Because in her mother's old-fashioned foreign background mindset, daughters served and sons received. Sarah had never said anything about it. What would she say? How do you explain to your mother that you're drowning when your mother thinks you're just swimming? She got no appreciation, no recognition, no acknowledgement that she was holding the entire household together with her bare hands while simultaneously trying to build a future for herself. Until last Wednesday. Last Wednesday, everything changed. Sarah's biochemistry professor, Dr. Martinez, had asked her to stay after the lecture. They'd been discussing Sarah's midterm exam, a perfect score, despite everything, and Dr. Martinez wanted to talk about research opportunities. You have real potential, Sarah, Dr. Martinez had said, leaning against her desk. Have you thought about graduate school? I could write you a recommendation. Sarah had felt something crack open in her chest. Someone saw her. Someone noticed she was more than just useful. The conversation stretched on. Questions about her goals, her interests, whether she'd considered pediatric nursing or emergency medicine. Dr. Martinez shared stories from her own university days, offered advice, made Sarah feel like maybe, just maybe, she was worth investing in. By the time Sarah glanced at her phone, it was 9 p.m. Her stomach dropped. She'd missed the dinner prep, the kid pickup, everything. She drove home with her hands tight on the steering wheel, trying to calculate the damage. Maybe her mother had ordered takeout. Maybe the boys had figured out microwave dinners. The moment she walked through the door, she knew she'd been wrong to hope. Her mother was standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, face set in that particular expression of disappointment that Sarah knew too well. Where have you been? Her mother's voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet house. I'm sorry. I was talking to my professor after class and Do you know what time it is? Dinner wasn't made. The dishes from yesterday are still in the sink. Alex had to pick up your brothers and sister from school because you couldn't be bothered to show up. Sarah opened her mouth to explain, but her mother wasn't finished. You're useless. You don't help out at all. The words landed like a slap. Useless. She was useless. Sarah felt something inside her snap, Not loudly. There was no dramatic breaking sound, no thunderclap. Just a small, quiet snap like a thread pulled too tight. All those mornings starting at 5:30. All those meals cooked. All those loads of laundry. All those miles driven. All that vacuuming and scrubbing and organizing and remembering and caring and doing. Useless. "Sorry for being useless," Sarah said, her voice eerily calm. She turned and walked to her room. She closed the door. She sat on her bed and stared at her hands that were always busy, always working, always giving. And she decided something. If she was useless, well, they were about to find out exactly how useless she was. The next morning, Sarah's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. She turned it off and went back to sleep. At 7 a.m., she woke up naturally, got ready for university, and left. She didn't make breakfast. She didn't load the dishwasher. She didn't yell upstairs for her siblings. She just left. Her phone buzzed in her first class. "Mom, where are you?" "The kids need to get to school." Sarah turned her phone on silent and slipped it into her bag. After her classes ended at 3:30, Sarah didn't go home. She went to the university library instead, found a quiet corner in the biochemistry section, opened her textbook. At 6 p.m., her phone showed 17 missed calls and 34 text messages. She didn't respond to any of them. At 9 p.m., when the library closed, Sarah finally drove home. The house was chaos. Dirty dishes covered every counter surface in the kitchen. The sink was overflowing. Someone had apparently attempted to make pasta and left the burnt pot on the stove. The living room looked like a tornado had hit. Backpacks, shoes, papers, empty chip bags everywhere. Her mother was waiting in the living room, face red. "Where have you been? Your siblings missed school today because I had to take them at 9 when I could get off work, and I got written up for being late. There's no food in this house. Alex and Ben are furious they had to order pizza, and this mess—" "I was at the library," Sarah said calmly, "studying, for university. The university I'm paying for myself." "You need to—" "No." Sarah's voice was still calm, eerily calm. "I don't need to do anything. I'm useless, remember? Useless people don't need to cook or clean or drive anyone anywhere." She walked to her room and closed the door. Sarah kept it up. Day 2. No dishes washed, no dinner made, no sibling pickup. Library until 9 p.m. Day 3, the same. Day 4, the same. By the end of the week, the house was uninhabitable. The kitchen smelled like rotting food. Every dish in the house was dirty. The living room carpet was covered in crumbs and stains. The bathrooms, Sarah didn't even want to think about the bathrooms. Chris had missed 3 days of school because nobody had driven him. Diana had missed volleyball practice and was now benched for the next game. Ethan had worn the same shirt for 4 days because nobody had done laundry. Alex and Ben had spent over $300 on takeout between them and were complaining loudly about the cost. Her mother had been written up twice more at work for lateness and was on the verge of losing her job. And everyone, every single person in that house, was furious at Sarah. "You're being selfish," Diana yelled at her. "You're ruining everything," Chris accused. "What's wrong with you?" Ben demanded. Her mother just looked at her with cold disappointment, which somehow hurt more than the yelling. Sarah felt the pressure bearing down on her, the guilt, the doubt. Was she the asshole here? Was she wrong? Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe she should just go back to how things were. Every single day she heard it from someone. "You're being ridiculous. This is childish. Family helps family. We need you." Hearing it every day was getting to her. But then she'd remember, "You're useless. You don't help out at all." And she'd stay in the library until closing time. On Monday of the second week, Sarah did something she'd never done before. She went to the university's student support services. The office was small and cluttered, with motivational posters on the walls, and a kindly-looking woman named Patricia behind the desk. Patricia had gray hair and warm eyes, and the kind of face that invited confession. Sarah sat down in the chair across from Patricia's desk and started talking. She told her everything, the 5:30 a.m. mornings. The endless chores, the lack of appreciation, her brother's laziness, her mother's exploitation, the $150 she paid every week from her meager allowance while her employed brothers paid nothing. "You're useless. You don't help out at all." Sarah's voice cracked on those words. Patricia listened without interrupting. When Sarah finally finished, Patricia leaned forward. "Sarah, what you're describing is parentification. It's a form of abuse where a child is forced to take on adult responsibilities that aren't age-appropriate, and it sounds like you've been experiencing this for years." Sarah blinked. She'd never thought of it as abuse. It was just how things were. "Here's what I want you to understand," Patricia continued. "You are not useless. You are not selfish. You are a 20-year-old nursing student who deserves the space to focus on her education and her future. What you're doing right now, setting boundaries, is healthy." Patricia helped Sarah create an action plan. First priority, financial independence. Patricia connected her with the campus employment office, who had an opening for a student help desk position. 15 hours a week, minimum wage, but it would be Sarah's own money, money her mother couldn't demand. Money that wasn't tied to guilt and obligation. Sarah got the job within a week. Around the same time, her boyfriend broke up with her. They'd been dating for 6 months, and she'd barely noticed when he started pulling away. She had no energy left for a relationship. When he said, "I feel like I'm dating a ghost," she couldn't even argue. She was a ghost. She'd ghosted herself. The breakup hurt, but it also felt like relief. One less thing to manage, one less person to disappoint. With her new job, Sarah felt something shift. Not dramatically, but subtly. She had her own money now. She had proof that someone thought she was valuable enough to pay. She went back to driving her younger siblings, Chris, Diana, and Ethan, to school. Not because she gave in. Not because her mother demanded it. But because she genuinely cared about their futures. Chris was 17, a junior year, thinking about college. Diana was 15, still figuring out who she was. Ethan was 12 and innocent in all of this. They didn't deserve to suffer because the adults in their lives were failing. But Sarah didn't go back to the rest of it. No cooking for the whole family. No cleaning up after her adult brothers. No 5:30 a.m. wake-ups to serve people who never said thank you. Her mother tried a different tactic. "I'm calling your Aunt Maria," her mother announced one evening. "She needs to know how you're behaving." Sarah's heart sank. Aunt Maria was her mother's younger sister. They'd always been close, immigrated to Australia together, raised their families in the same neighborhood, spoke to each other every day. If Aunt Maria sided with her mother, Sarah would be completely alone. Her mother called Aunt Maria that night, and Sarah could hear the conversation through her bedroom wall. "She's being so disrespectful, Maria. Won't help around the house, letting her siblings suffer. I don't know what happened to her. So selfish. Never raised her to be like this." Sarah lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling her stomach twist into knots. The next day, Aunt Maria called Sarah directly. "Your mother is very upset," Aunt Maria said when Sarah answered. "She says you've abandoned the family." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Aunt Maria, Let me finish. She says you've abandoned the family, but I want to hear your side, and I want the truth, Sarah, the whole truth." So, Sarah told her everything. She told her about the 5:30 a.m. mornings that had been happening since she was 18. The cooking, cleaning, childcare. The $150 she contributed while her employed brothers contributed nothing. The way her mother never helped, never appreciated, never even noticed. The useless comment that had finally broken something inside her. When Sarah finished, there was a long silence on the line. Then Aunt Maria said very quietly, "Oh, sweetheart." "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. "I know she's your sister. I know you're close. Sarah, listen to me. I am horrified, not at you, at her." Sarah's breath caught. "When your mother and I were growing up," Aunt Maria continued, her voice shaking slightly, "our parents treated us exactly the same way. Our brothers did nothing. We did everything. We were servants in our own home, and when your mother and I moved to Australia, do you know what we promised each other? What? That we would never raise our children that way, that our daughters would have choices, that our sons would learn to be partners, not princes, that we would break the cycle. Aunt Maria's voice hardened. Your mother broke that promise, and I'm not going to let her break you too. What do you mean? I mean I have a 3-bedroom house, Sarah. No kids of my own, you know that, and I'm offering, you can move in with me. You, Chris, Diana, and Ethan, all of you. If they want to come. Sarah couldn't speak. She just held the phone and cried. I have the space, Aunt Maria continued. It's an hour from your university, but there's a bus route. You won't have to pay rent. I have plenty from my job. The younger kids can switch to the school that's walking distance from my house. You can focus on your degree. They can be kids, and you can all be free. Aunt Maria, Sarah managed, I don't know what to say. Say yes, and tell those kids I'm coming to pick you up this weekend. The move happened fast. Sarah, Chris, Diana, and Ethan packed their essential belongings on Saturday morning while their mother was at work. Aunt Maria showed up with a borrowed van and a fierce expression that said she was ready for a fight if it came to it. It didn't. Alex and Ben watched from the living room, video game controllers still in their hands, and said nothing. By Saturday evening, Sarah was unpacking boxes in a small, clean bedroom in Aunt Maria's house. The walls were cream-colored. The window overlooked a small garden. The bed had fresh sheets that smelled like lavender. She sat on the bed and felt something unfamiliar. Peace. The hour drive to university wasn't ideal, but Sarah discovered the bus route had Wi-Fi, which meant she could study during the commute. She could read textbooks, watch lecture recordings, do homework. The commute became productive time instead of wasted time. More importantly, the house was different. Quiet, clean, respectful. Aunt Maria had simple rules. Everyone does their own laundry. Everyone helps with 1 dinner per week. Everyone cleans up their own messes. Everyone contributes 1 hour of housework on Saturdays. It was so reasonable, it made Sarah want to cry. Chris took to it immediately. He started keeping his room tidy without being asked. He volunteered to do grocery runs. He helped Ethan with homework without complaint. Diana blossomed. The angry, defensive teenager softened into something gentler. She cooked dinner every Wednesday, always trying new recipes, always asking everyone's opinion. She started standing up for herself at school, setting boundaries with friends who took advantage. Ethan thrived. His grades improved. He joined the chess club at his new school. He smiled more, laughed louder, stopped walking on eggshells. And Sarah started healing. One of the best things she did for herself was start therapy. It was expensive, $150 per session, which was painful given her student budget. She could only afford to go once a month. But even that 1 monthly session was changing her life. Her therapist, Dr. Reeves, helped her understand the parentification Aunt Maria had mentioned, helped her process the guilt that kept whispering, "You abandoned your family," helped her recognize that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was survival. You can't pour from an empty cup, Dr. Reeves told her in their 3rd session. And Sarah, your cup wasn't just empty. It had a hole in the bottom. Sarah laughed, even as tears ran down her face. Slowly, she started filling the cup again. She joined a study group at university, made friends who invited her to coffee, to movies, to normal 20-year-old activities. She went to a concert for the first time in years and felt the music in her chest and remembered what joy felt like. Her grades improved. Without the constant exhaustion, her brain actually worked. She aced her midterms, impressed her professors, got invited to join that research project Dr. Martinez had mentioned. She even went on a few dates. Nothing serious, but the reminder that she was a person, not just a function, was profound. Meanwhile, back at her mother's house, things were falling apart. Sarah heard it through Chris, who still talked to their older brothers occasionally. Her mother had tried to make Alex and Ben help out. They'd refused. "We pay for our own stuff. We don't owe you anything," Ben had apparently said. So her mother had turned to the last available target. Chris. Before Chris moved out, she'd started demanding he do all the chores Sarah used to do: cooking, cleaning, driving, all of it. Chris had done it for about 2 weeks before he called Aunt Maria crying and asking if the offer to move in was still open. It was. He left the next day. Her mother was now living with just Alex and Ben, 2 adult sons who created messes and contributed nothing, and she was drowning in the exact chaos she'd criticized Sarah for creating. Sarah felt a complicated mix of emotions about that. Satisfaction, yes, but also sadness. Her mother could have learned, could have changed, could have apologized. She didn't. Months passed. Sarah settled into her new life like a plant finally getting enough water and sunlight. She hadn't realized how much she'd been withering until she started growing again. Diana turned 16 and got a part-time job at a bookstore. She saved up for a laptop and started writing poetry. She showed Sarah some of it one evening. Raw, honest, beautiful words about feeling invisible and finding her voice. "You inspired me," Diana said shyly, "standing up like that. Leaving. I want to be brave, like you." Sarah hugged her sister and felt something warm bloom in her chest. Ethan, now 13, started teaching himself to code. Aunt Maria had an old laptop she gave him, and he spent hours watching YouTube tutorials, building simple programs, dreaming of working for a tech company someday. "I want to make video games," he told Sarah one day, "but like games that mean something, that help people." "You'll do it," Sarah said, and she meant it. Chris was preparing for his final year of high school, thinking about university, asking Sarah questions about student loans and degrees and what it was really like. "Do you regret it?" he asked her one evening. "Leaving like that? Not having a relationship with Mom anymore?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I regret that it had to happen that way. I wish she'd listened. I wish she'd cared enough to change. But leaving? No. That saved my life." Then came the call she didn't expect. It was Chris, now 19, finishing up his first semester at a local university. "Sarah, I need to tell you something." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need to apologize. For everything. For letting you do everything for all those years. For not standing up for you when Mom called you useless. For being angry at you when you stopped." Sarah's throat tightened. "Chris, let me finish. I knew what was happening. I saw how hard you worked. I saw how much you did. And I didn't care enough to help because it didn't affect me. As long as you were taking care of everything, I got to coast. And that was wrong. I was wrong." "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "I'm telling you this because I moved out. I'm living with a friend now. Mom started doing to me what she did to you, treating me like a live-in servant. And I finally understood. How trapped you must have felt. How exhausting it was. How soul-crushing it is to give everything and hear that you're useless." They talked for over an hour. Real conversation. Honest and painful and healing. It didn't fix everything. Years of resentment couldn't vanish in one phone call. But it was a start. 2 years after she'd walked out of her mother's house, Sarah stood in a university auditorium wearing a cap and gown. She'd graduated. Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Cum laude. In the audience sat Aunt Maria, crying happy tears. Diana and Ethan cheering loudly. Chris, home from his own university for the weekend, grinning with pride. Some of her new friends from her study group. Dr. Martinez, who'd helped her apply to graduate programs. Patricia from Student Services, who'd hugged her and said, "I knew you could do it." Her mother wasn't there. Sarah hadn't invited her. Hadn't even told her about the graduation date. Some people might call that cruel. Sarah called it self-preservation. She'd sent her mother one letter 6 months ago. In it, she'd explained everything, calmly, clearly, without anger. She'd explained parentification, exploitation, the damage done by years of thankless labor. She'd explained that she was willing to rebuild a relationship, but only if her mother was willing to acknowledge the harm and change. Her mother never responded, so Sarah moved forward without her. After the graduation ceremony, Aunt Maria took everyone out to a nice restaurant. They ordered too much food, laughed too loud, took dozens of photos. "I'm so proud of you," Aunt Maria said, squeezing Sarah's hand across the table. "I couldn't have done it without you," Sarah replied honestly. That night, Sarah got an email that made her scream with joy. She'd been accepted into the graduate registered nurse program at the hospital, where she'd done her final placement. Full scholarship. Guaranteed job upon completion. She was going to be a nurse. A real, professional, credentialed nurse. She was going to help people. She was going to make a difference. She was going to build a career on her own terms. For once in her life, Sarah felt like she was moving in a direction she'd chosen, not a direction someone demanded. Not a path determined by guilt or obligation or someone else's need. Her direction. Her choice. Her life. Sarah still thinks about her mother sometimes. Wonders if she's okay. Wonders if she ever understood what she did wrong. Wonders if she's lonely in that house with just Alex and Ben, 2 adult sons who'll never grow up. Part of Sarah, a small, stubborn part, still hopes for an apology, for acknowledgement, for her mother to say, "I was wrong, I'm sorry, you were never useless." But Sarah has stopped waiting for it. She's learned that you can't force people to see your value. You can only decide to see it yourself. And Sarah finally sees it. She sees a young woman who survived, who worked her way through university while being treated like a servant, who set boundaries when everyone told her she was wrong, who built a new life when the old one tried to destroy her. She sees someone strong, someone valuable, someone who was never useless at all. What we learn from this story is that sometimes the only way to prove your value to people who take you for granted is to stop giving them everything, because those who truly appreciate you will never call you useless when you're the one holding everything together. And setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's the moment you finally choose yourself over people who only saw you as convenient. Subscribe if you loved this, and drop a comment. What's one thing you'd stop doing if you went on strike tomorrow?